Hey, what's up, YouTube? Well, I am finally back in Texas. That is my good news that I would like to share today. And the bad news is that yesterday, which was the 16-year anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, there was a Category 4 hurricane that made landfall in a very similar area. It followed a very similar path. And that has something to do with why I am in Texas. But I'd rather not go into too much detail about that because I don't want someone to find out my real world identity. All I can say is that if I would have stayed where I was, I would have been more directly affected by it, although I'm sure I would have lived. So, anyway, I just want to talk about that today, about hurricanes and natural disasters. Well, I want to title this video Hurricane Ida, which I'm pretty sure will be retired. But I just want to kind of ramble on about that, about how, I just hate living on the Gulf Coast. I'm glad to be back in Texas. I'm glad to have my telescope. And by the way, there is a beautiful half moon in the day sky. It's at that lunar phase where you're exactly halfway between the full moon and the new moon. So it's basically third quarter, which is basically a half moon that spends half of its time out in the day and half out at night. So there isn't a cloud in the sky right now. We had no effects of the storm yesterday here in Texas, but it was very hard to get here. It took twice as long to get here as it ordinarily would because of the people evacuating. So I'd really just like to sit and talk about how, as much as I wish I could live with my mom, I'm glad to be back in Texas. Home sweet Texas home. The best state within the best country in the world. But those same feelings are returning like they do every year. Those feelings of wishing, that I could just live in a place that doesn't have hurricanes. I mean, sure, you're always going to have natural disasters. But hurricanes are unique to the coast, or, well, in this case, the Gulf Coast, or, the Southeast Coast. I mean, people always say, well, you would have tornadoes if you were further inland. But you could still have tornadoes. What I'm saying is anywhere can have a tornado, technically. I mean, yes, there are some places that are more notorious for it than others, but you can have tornadoes anywhere. Okay, but hurricanes are exclusive to a coastline that has warm water. So, I'm just feeling the same way I did a year ago at this time. I'm really sick and tired of living on the Gulf Coast, in the Gulf Coast Plain, as they call it. Like, I've spent my whole entire life on the Gulf Coast Plain, and I really would, or at least just visit. I would just love to experience something else that this world has to offer. I would love to live in a place that is further inland, like that video I made called Awesome Austin a year ago as of September 1st. I love the Burr months. I look forward to going into September, 2 days from now. But, September is technically a summer month, and it is the peak of the hurricane season every year around this time. We have several bad hurricanes, whether or not they make landfall in such a way that they're devastating impacts, that's another story. But I just long to live in a place that just doesn't have to think about hurricanes. I mean, yes, everyone has natural disasters. I understand that. But hurricanes are unique to only certain types of coastline. or the threat of a storm surge. I mean, a hurricane really and truly can, I mean, it goes inland, but then it's no longer a hurricane. Like it quickly loses that intensity and then it just becomes a rain event. So, I'd love to live in Austin where they'll never have to think about a storm surge. Um, I just would love to live somewhere besides the Gulf Coast, you know? And while it's nice if you have the ability to evacuate, that's just not always possible or easy. You have to have money, you have to know where to go and how to get there. Um, and sometimes it's easier said than done. I mean, we actually got stranded at a gas station and had to wait for it to get gas. The gas station ran out of gas, so we were there for over an hour. Now, I've never had that experience, but of course, I know some people. Well, I don't know people, but I've heard of it happening in other hurricanes to people who evacuated. And so it's sort of like I evacuated in a sense, even though, I was already going to come back to Texas. My dad was already going to bring me back to Texas anyway, but the hurricane made it more urgent. So, anyway, a part of me kind of wishes I would have stayed somehow, and just been there, for the excitement. But then I'm also glad that I don't have to be without power and everything. And it's just, the hardest part on me right now is just, getting through the people that had to deal with the hurricane, because they don't have power and so they can't get on the computer and all that. And, with cell phones, it isn't like the old days of a landline that you didn't have to charge up. So, anyway, Hurricane Ida was pretty bad, but I don't really know anyone that was killed. And I just wish I lived somewhere that September could just be a pleasant fall month where you did not have to think about hurricanes.